Welcome back to my YouTube channel, guys. In today's video, we'll be looking at some of the reference books that I use to teach and prepare for my lessons. So this is Mastering English with the Straits Times. This is the upper primary edition. As you can see, I've got the first edition as well as the second edition. So let's take a look at the content page. So they cover a lot of oral topics that are exam prone, continuous writing as in the compo writing topics, and situational writing. I personally think the oral and the continuous writing are really good compared to the other sections. So let's go to the oral part first. For oral, talking about the environment, part 1. So there's the reading aloud passage of a reasonable length, and then stimulus-based conversation. This would be the second part of your oral, where you get to have a conversation with your examiner. So there are some teacher's prompts and then the picture, as well as supplementary reading that is from the Straits Times to give you that background information and that knowledge to talk about, to have a conversation with your examiner for the stimulus-based conversation. So this is just something extra, and I particularly like the kind of note-taking space that you have after reading the supplementary writing and the passage, as well as the topics that are given for oral and continuous writing. They're very exam prone. And you also have this gray box here, which contains like the fab vocab. These are very good in order to score for language. And then there's a supplementary reading once again. And your notes, you can just jot down what you have learned from reading the supplementary reading. All right, these are from Straits Times articles, by the way. So that's really good because these are rooted in reality and real life data. And last but not the least, this list just continues. I would like to focus on, let's go back to the continuous writing from the content page. So you can see actually for oral, before we move on to the continuous writing, you've got environment, performing arts, healthy living, family ties, family bonding, reading, food, volunteering, tending a garden, animals and teamwork, and so on and so forth. So these are very exam-prone topics at PSLE level or upper primary level. And then let's move on to the continuous writing. For continuous writing, you have some exam-prone compo topics. Let's take a look at page 46. So this is the continuous writing section, and then writing about bullies. So there are some pictures given to you to help you choose, and then some bullet points as usual, some tips and pointers, as well as a planning page, and then a gray box, another gray box containing good vocab. And then they give some example paragraphs and supplementary reading from Straits Times. So these are very useful because they actually explicitly model to you how the show, not tell, and the 5 senses can be written. And then the same format, the same template goes on for other topics like accidents and so on and so forth. So basically, this book is very useful, I feel, because you have the exam-prone topics such as writing about bullies, accidents, kindness, a day out, neighborhood, disasters, sports, mishaps, family matters, disappointments, school events, a crime, and so on and so forth. I personally like the situational writing part of it as well, but that's mainly because there's a model answer at the back. There are model answers to each question at the back of the book. So you can really refer to them, and for oral, for continuous writing, everything, there are some model responses even for situational writing. So that is it for this book. I got it from Popular Bookstore, so it's quite useful, and you can check it out if your kid is in upper primary level. Okay, and then this is the next book. This is called Ace Your Essay Writing, Argumentative, Discursive and Expository Essays for O-level and for integrated program level kind of students. And they contain full-length model compos, real-world current trending situations addressed, advice on planning and writing your essays, and extensive word lists to expand your vocabulary. This also I picked it up from Popular Bookstore. So what is good about it is that it contains the exam-prone topics, even some GP-ish topics like media, social media, technology, youth, education, arts and culture, tradition and heritage. Religion is a bit controversial and a bit touchy topic. So I would steer clear away from these unless of course you're a GP student and would like to refer to this section. Society, family, environment, health, science and technology, sports, government and leadership, globalization, and then the elderly. So if you look at the front part, there are some techniques on how to plan for your essay with some proverbs, useful quotations, categorized according to the different themes, as you can see along the margins. And then you've got like the structure of the peel paragraphs, the overall structure, and how to organize your paragraphing and your essay, be it argumentative essay format or discursive essay format, and what are the differences. And then there are some 100 useful phrases or expressions for writing better essays, for the introduction, for the body, as well as the conclusion, and so on and so forth. So these are very useful tips because many students may have writer's block, like a mental block when it comes to writing these types of essays, especially using sophisticated language to express themselves. And then there are some mind maps that actually show the interconnections and intersections of the different themes. This is very useful because you want to study smart and not really study hard for the different topics. And then the only downside I would say would be that these essays, model essays, tend to be a bit on the wordier, longer side, but they do contain very good content, real life data, and they are really well researched, and they contain the good words and phrases that are highlighted. So those are really good. And then overall, this is quite a good investment book. So yeah, you can check it out, definitely. And then for the next book, this is called O-Level English Oral. There are 40 reading and interaction practices inside. Official marking scheme. Oftentimes, students are not sure what is expected of them for oral. So these marking schemes will give them an idea, a clearer picture of the expectations of the examiners. And then suggested answers. So this is also picked up from Popular Bookstore. So I feel that the suggested answers are really good. Of course, the only downside is the content page doesn't differentiate between the practices. The topics are not really, the themes are not really clearly spelled out. That is a downside. But by and large, the tips for oral, be it reading aloud of the passage or spoken interaction, they're quite useful. And then they give some additional tips with some acronyms like these. And then the reading aloud, the assessment criteria, which is, how the rubrics actually used to grade you, and then the spoken interaction assessment criteria, how many marks, where would you fall, and so on and so forth in the rubrics. And then let's move on to the actual reading aloud passage itself. So if you are testing your student, or if you are a student being tested, you're just practicing your reading aloud, you can read off this script and then record it and then listen to it again, or get someone to share. You can photocopy and give this to your examiner, so-called examiner, and then you can practice from there on. And then you've got, I know nowadays you have got like video recordings rather than pictures per se, like static pictures on a piece of paper. But these are still, I haven't really come across those kinds of resources in Popular Bookstore. So I guess we could make do with these first. So you've got pictures, and then the questions are, because this is a practice, the questions are also revealed on the same page, but in the exam conditions, you would not be shown the questions. And then the model responses for each one of them, which I feel is a really good way to, and the model responses are pretty good, I would say, well researched and good content and good language. So you can refer to these model responses to see how, how you could answer the different topics. And of course, they're all exam prone, but some are more exam prone than others. So you could really look at the TYS and then pick out those exam prone exercises and then practice on those much more than the others. And for the next book, this is called Just Right. It's a composition guide for upper secondary and integrated program as well. It's the revised edition by Alethea Chan. And I would say this is quite good because it features annotated students' essays from various top schools in Singapore, clear instructions on different genres of writing, not only narrative and personal recounts, but also discursive, argumentative, and mixed genre essays, hybrid essays per se, and useful topical notes and online links. So if you look at this, this is the content page, and you've got all these student-written essays on expository, argumentative, descriptive, narrative, and then mixed genre. So I really particularly like the mixed genre ones because they're like hybrid essays and a new trend in terms of asking questions. So I've marked out, there are a lot of pointers, and beyond the pointers, they give like model topics and the keywords, how to analyze your question analysis. And then beyond these, let's just go to the model essays themselves. So sample expository essays. Along the margins, you have some comments like what is the hook, what is the thesis statement, what is the evidence, what is the explanation, what is the link. And then you have underlined them. And then like from this is written by which student, what is the topic, and which school, which level are they at. So I feel the comments along the margins are quite useful because it helps you think in terms of structure. Yeah, and then so because these are written by other top school students themselves, hopefully they'll be a bit more relatable and not as ideal or perfect or unattainable as when it is written by a teacher, an examiner. So you can really see, you can go through this, this book is quite a useful guidebook, I would say. You can pick this up from Popular as well. The next book is called Developing Situational Writing Skills, a Model Approach. This is just the volume 1. It's the 3rd edition. This is mainly for O-level secondary school students, and it contains concise study notes, varied text forms, focus on writing skills, grammar and vocabulary practice with a wide variety of language tasks and activities. This is also picked up from Popular. So if you look at the content page, it contains informal letters and emails, quite a lot of topics and areas of focus points, formal letters and emails, and so on and so forth. So I've just put an asterisk for those more commonly exam prone, frequently recurring kind of topics. So if you look at the front part, it gives you some ideas on how long to plan, how to manage your time, what is the marking scheme like, and some other tips and pointers like a checklist for you. And then let's take a look at the first one. As usual, this is how a situational writing question looks like with the poster or the flyer or the background information. And then there's a model response here. So model responses are really good because oftentimes you don't get to see what is expected of you, what is required of you for situational writing. They not only give out the format details, but also the content and the language details clearly marked out along the margins. And then each paragraph pretty much is, annotated along the margins for the model response. So let's take a look at the next one. Same thing. Every paragraph pretty much, this is to do with structure and organization of your response. Yeah? So the model response is clearly annotated, and that is what I love about this book. So it contains a model response for all the different, let's see how many in the content page there are. So for 28 pieces of situational writing, each one contains a model response. And I think it's quite useful. Same for volume 2 as well, yeah, which I'll be showing in a short while. Okay, on to the next book. This is the Developing Situational Writing Skills. This is volume number 2. So it's just a continuation, same format, same template, but it contains additional types of situational writing like recommendation reports, incident reports, eyewitness accounts, newspaper reports, reports of club activities, proposal reports, school magazine reports, event reports, and so on and so forth. Then articles for newsletters or magazines, and then speeches and debates, which are like miscellaneous with some these model responses. So same thing. This is volume number 2 and the last volume so far. Okay, on to the next book. This is called Editing Exercises for Upper Secondary, and there's also a counterpart to this for lower secondary in orange. This is in blue. So what you have in front of you contains 50 editing exercises based on latest O-level examination format. It provides helpful explanations to answers, which I'll be going through later. It gives ample of practice to students for improving their grammatical skills. So if you look at the insides of it, so within the, let's take for example, a random editing exercise number 3. So you have the passage, is supposed to pick out the grammatical errors in it. So if you go to the model responses, like editing exercise 3, for example, or for that matter, any other editing exercise, yeah. So let's say this is a neater one, so I'm showing you this page, editing exercise 41. So you have the wrong the ungrammatical word that has been circled and in bold. So then along the margins you have the correct answers. These are the answers, right? Answer key. So, and then for each one of them, each one of the 10 questions, you have the explanation, like in terms of clear-cut grammar rules in brackets. Why is this an acceptable, if it's a tick, or why is this an unacceptable ungrammatical word choice. So they basically explain in terms of grammar rules. So I think that is very useful even for students who are learning by themselves, who are not really attached to a tuition center or tutor. Yeah, they're just learning on their own, let's say for private candidates or even students who do not have tuition. So I think this is a very useful way because the explanations are quite clear cut, and then they can back it up with viewing some YouTube videos on English grammar. Yeah, so this is a really good book in that sense. Yeah, so we've got this upper secondary version as well as the lower secondary version, which is coming up next. On to the next book. This is like what I said earlier on, the lower secondary version of the editing exercises. So same old thing, same old contents. The only difference is that it is more geared towards an easier students, as an easier practices. Yeah, so students who would actually be in Sec 1, Sec 2, they can practice this. If they face difficulty in editing, they can purchase this book first, or get this book before they move on to the upper secondary version, so that it builds up their confidence level as well as their ability to handle these kinds of editing exercises. So same old thing for the answer key, the explanations are there, and then the correct answers are there. So I can even mark out and back it up with, you can even mark out in red and then make some annotations along the margins and back it up with some YouTube videos on grammar rules. Onto the literature texts. So in school, let's say, for example, you're doing The Great Gatsby or Hard Times. So for these kinds of lit texts, it is advisable that you get 2 copies. So for example, one copy can be the one that you use for school, which is like brand new. As you can see, it's almost as good as a new fresh copy. There are no annotations, no notes along the margins. Yeah, okay. And then this one you can keep it. And then if you have a second copy of the same literature text, you can actually use it for your personal study. Yeah, you can use it for your personal study, and then you can make it like really color coded, and it can contain a lot of annotations, highlights, and along the margins you can really mark it out as I've got like in this text here. So it can be really messy because you're owning your notes and it's only for your eyes. So yeah, this will be useful if you get a second copy for any literature text such as these. So it is highly recommended, but it is not a must. If you feel that one copy is good enough, that is fine as well. But this is just my way of preparing my students for their examinations. Okay, onto the literature study guides next. So I'm a big fan of Cliff's Notes as well as York Notes, which I'll come to later. So for Cliff's Notes, you can get these in hard copy format from like bookstores like Kinokuniya and so on and so forth. So if you look inside, let me show you the content pages. They're very useful because if you want to quickly understand what your literature text is all about, this is the surefire way to go about it. So it contains introduction to the novel, about the author, background material like the context and social, political context of understanding hard times, characterization, introduction, major characters, minor characters, significance of setting, critical analysis for the 3 books, as in the 3 chapters, or so on and so forth, and then Dickens's philosophy and style, as in the writer's way of writing, questions for review, essay questions and passage-based questions, and then, where did they take their references from or sources from. So this is really useful, and because these are study guides, you can actually color code them and make annotations along the margins like I've got here. So you can even make your own notes based on these study guides, and then I will cover another video on that on another day. So I'll show you how to create your own notes based on these study guides. But yes, so to come back to our topic, Cliff's Notes are a really good way. And then as you can see, they come in this kind of format. You have the thinner version as well as the thicker version. So over 300 titles available and 100 million sold. And sometimes you can even get their downloadable version. But I'm a bit more old school. I prefer the hard copy version, and there's just something about the hard copy version of a study guide, especially for literature, that is very appealing. And then the thicker version basically contains a lot more in-depth analysis of the same old features that the thinner versions may contain. So yes, and they even contain some critical essays, model essays, and so on and so forth. They even contain some IT references and resources page. So yes, these are a great way, especially if you're looking to cram a bit last minute for your literature exam or literature test. This is a surefire way to get a bird's eye view, a bird's eye understanding of what the text is all about, and especially if you're hard pressed for time. And then after the Cliff's Notes are there, I've got the York Notes. So let me show you. The York Notes are basically what are very similar to the Cliff's Notes, but they're also come in varied topics and varied literature texts. So for example, let's take a look at this one. This is Silas Marner, York Notes for GCSE by George Eliot. So if you go to the content page, right? The content page, it contains like, they're all pretty much standard, the features. How to study a novel, author and context, setting and background, character tree, map of the setting, timeline, general summary, detailed summaries by chapters, and then themes, structure, characters, language and style, how to use quotations, coursework essay, sitting in the examination, improving your grade, sample essay plan and further questions, as well as some hints and answers at the back, test model responses, and some literary terms that are clarified in the glossary. So I think it's also I personally like the York notes better because they're a bit more colorful with some annotations along the margins, and it's for visual learners it's a bit more appealing than the plain and a bit dull Cliff's notes. But anyway, whichever rocks your boat, you can actually get them. And then there are also some important fun facts along the margins for York notes. So I've got York notes for quite a number of texts like these. So they're all the same features like I said earlier on. You can definitely check them out at Kinokuniya or whichever bookstore is you can find them at. Major bookstore should contain them. Onto the IB Diploma guidebooks next. We have got this for English language and literature, textual analysis for these two subjects, skills for success. In this series, we've got this book. So if you look inside the content page, what is textual analysis? And then they give some lit devices list, literary devices list, approaches to non-literary texts, and then they have some practice sample papers, and text types, approaches to literary works, approaches to visual text, and writing about texts. This part is quite useful because they contain like model responses and a lot of IT related QR codes and IT related resources. So if you look inside, they start off with some simple terminology and jargon clarification, and then they have a text type which has clearly been annotated and color coded, and it contains a lot of comments along the margins as well. And then they give you the assessment overview. What is it for paper 1, paper 2, HL, essay, individual oral, learner portfolio, and what are the skills or objectives or learning outcomes for the IB diploma. And then if you go inside, you've got a lot of sample text types, and then some comments and some word choices list. So you find it useful. Another text type, lots of QR codes. So I think these are quite another text type, and then some keywords and explanations. So this is very colorful and more appealing for visual learners, and they also contain a list of literary devices, as you can see. So let me show you. These are some literary devices in bullet points. So it really clarifies by giving you examples of what each literary devices or rhetorical devices that you need to look out for and identify in your text type. So quite a number of them: antithesis, asyndeton, hypophora, parallelism, polysyndeton, rhetorical question, and antiaplosis, analogy, anaphora, antimetable, and so on and so forth. So it's very useful. And then you have some samples, political speeches or text types that are based on past year IB papers, those that have actually come out for the exams, with some model responses and some additional notes. So the same thing for literary works as well. So they contain a lot of these poems and prose passages that have been analyzed. So yeah, overall, I think this is quite a useful book. If you go to chapters 4 and 5, they have some additional features for approaches to visual text and writing about text. Let's go to page 68. Yeah. So these are more of like analyzing the visual imagery. Yeah, so they actually give lots of examples on how to analyze an advertisement or commercial or any other web page for that matter. They teach you like political cartoons, how to analyze them, And last but not the least, this last chapter of writing about texts, there are a lot of guidelines and tips and pointers which you can take home with you on how to write a good model response. So yes, I think overall this is a good book, and I ordered it from bookdepository.com. So if you would like, you can get this, and it's quite a beneficial guidebook, I would say, for the IB Diploma. On to the last book for this video. We've got for the IB Diploma Extended Essay Skills for Success series. So if you look inside, I know the extended essay, you can do it on any subject or any study, any field that you would like. But based on your expertise, area of expertise, this EE book is quite universally applicable. And that means regardless of whether you choose to do it in physics or whether you choose to do it in theatre studies or English literature or language or whatever for that matter, you can still use this EE guidebook to help you with it. So that's the beauty of this book, in the sense it's universally applicable. So let's take a look at the content page. Understanding the assessment criteria for EE. Formulating suitable titles. So this is a guidebook that helps you throughout the process of crafting an EE title and then writing your full EE essay. Okay, the formal presentation of the EE, academic honesty like plagiarism rules, citation and referencing, MLA or APA formatting, the role of the extended essay supervisor, the importance of reflections and keeping tabs on your learning process, and showing evidence of critical thinking, and then the marking scheme, the rubrics, the world studies extended essay, managing the extended essay process. So there are also some additional appendices. Top 10 tips for writing a successful extended essay student checklist. So you can actually use this checklist to take see if you have all the features, and then some model answers before the index. So once again, because it's in the same series as Skills for Success, this book is also quite colorful and visually appealing. And then you have like the assessment criteria and rubrics, and what are the aims and learning outcomes and objectives of writing the EE. So basically, they clearly spell out the assessment criteria, which will, inform you of what is expected of you. And then, they actually devote an entire chapter for understanding the grade descriptors, how are you graded, and what are the checklists to use on your own writing for the EE, and formulating suitable titles that will, be very useful, because some students are not sure of whether their area of focus is suitable as an EE topic or not. And then you've got like sample suitable research questions, and then what kind of questions you can ask about your own, EE topic, and then samples like history EE, econs EE. And then formulating a good research question, and so on and so forth. And they have some essay titles depending on whether it's business management, English language or literature, English literature, Spanish or econs or geography or history or philosophy or psychology, and group 4, group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. So basically all the different subjects and essay titles that correspond to each of the subjects. And then group 5 and then group 6. All right, world studies also. So this is quite useful, because at the end of every chapter you have a checklist like these. And then the formal presentation of the EE is also given to you here. It's presented in a very pictorial format. And then, so basically, I don't want to go through every page in here, but roughly you get how to upload your EE, how you can check for plagiarism, how you can, catch yourself before you are caught for, lifting from an academic source. What is academic honesty? What about the deadlines, the word limits, and citation, how to reference. So this is a very detailed book, guidebook, that will help you with not only meeting the IB's requirements, but also to exceed the expectations by choosing an appropriate referencing style, MLA or APA, and how you can, seek help from your extended essay supervisor, yeah, and reflection practices, and checklist for student reflections, and then how can you demonstrate evidence of critical thinking in your EE. Yeah, basically the criterion C, this critical thinking, how you can actually demonstrate that you have shown evidence of critical thinking in your EE. And then common mistakes with primary research and then secondary research. How do you conduct your research, the world studies extended essay, and so on. What is transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, choosing topics, and so on and so forth. So basically, you can get the book and then you can see how to format your appendix, 10 tips from the authors, and finally the checklist itself before you turn in your extended essay to your school supervisor. So that is it for this video. Thank you.